Hello and welcome to Rewired Mind Counseling Podcast. My name is Esther Obonde and I am the host of this show. Thank you for joining us for today's pioneering podcast on overcoming anxiety and depression using coping mechanisms. This will be achieved by integrating faith-based and clinical approaches and exploring ways that anxiety can be minimized, managed, or eliminated. I will be explaining my approaches in detail in my subsequent podcasts. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's episode 12. And today we have the pleasure of having Miss Rashan on this show. And I'm going to give her the chance to introduce herself and tell us what she has. She's loaded with experiences, she's good. She'll tell you all she has. And we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hello, hi, and everything in between. I am Rashawn Carter. I am the mental health passionate therapist, if you will. I am the owner and operator of Passion and Purpose Fulfilled, which is located here in Sugar Land, Texas. However, I do provide virtual services for the state of Louisiana as well for mental health and substance use disorder therapy, as well as offering nonprofit management consulting. Part of what I'm coming today with is information on how to best have work-life balance. And I know that that word or that sentiment gets thrown around a lot and is identified as something we all should have, but we all kind of struggle with. And we know that when we struggle with that, it brings along additional stress, probably some anxiety, and it may also bring along some depression as well, because we feel like we're not balanced, or we feel like we're leaving something off when we try to put our attention to one thing or another, and we may feel like everything has a priority. But we have to understand that it is best that we actually prioritize things and we find ways to ensure the balance happens. So when we think about work life balance, basically that looks like we're dealing with the different responsibilities. Maybe we've gotten additional responsibilities at work, maybe we've gotten additional responsibilities at home, maybe we're a parent and that comes with its own set of responsibilities. We're a spouse, that comes with its own set of responsibilities. And maybe we are an adult child of parents, grandparents, and so forth that may need our attention. And so we have to figure out which concept or which environment needs our attention the most. So typically what I look at and I think about when we think about those things is what is long standing. We know that we have to work in order to survive and so in order to support ourselves and all of the responsibilities that we may have. However, we also know that our home life is our first job. So once we get that understood and we identify that is our first job, not our place of employment or our career. Our first job is to be present and fully invested in our home life, because that's where we find our peace. That's where we find our solitude. And that may look like you may not have an additional person at home, but that may look like just keeping the home clean or keeping your space tidy and inviting, because we don't have to have just we don't have to have it inviting to others, but we have to have our home inviting to ourselves. So we're identifying ways to ensure that our home life looks the way we want it to look in order for us to be happy there and be content. Um, that may also look like, if you do have a spouse, making sure that your spouse is happy. You know, we I constantly say I'm not a fan of the statement happy wife, happy life. I actually like happy spouse, happy house because both parties have to be happy in the home. And, it's not just about one or the other. Now, granted, of course, with responsibilities, we have these role identities and responsibilities that we sometimes take on. And of course, by default, a lot of times it's okay. The wife takes care of a lot of stuff in the home, so of course it's like if she's happy, everybody's happy.
That's right.
But again, we gotta make sure, gentlemen, come on now. We gotta make sure you all are happy too. Or if your spouse is of the same sex, whoever your spouse is, it just goes back to happy house, happy spouse, and making sure that that is apparent, not to just to outside individuals, but inside our home. So that may look like ensuring that I call it um, checking in with the heart. Like, how's your heart? So having those conversations at home and identifying, like, hey, how are we doing? How are you doing? Do you feel as though I'm doing my fair share? Is there something more that I can be doing? Is there something less that I should be doing? Because as women, of course, we take on a lot of role too. And ladies, let's get it. Let's be real here. We will take on things and then blame the other person and saying, "Well, I have to take that on because you won't do it." But a lot of times it's because we're not communicating. We're not saying, "I need help," or "Can you help me?" And then we get the comments of, "Oh, well, they won't do it right." Well, it's called model the behavior. Show them what you're looking for and the way in which you want it to be done. And then guess what? They will follow suit. So it's following that and making sure that we're being clear and concise and also consistent with the communication. So that's one way of balancing home life. Work life is also, again, communication and setting boundaries. So I know that a lot of us are paid salary. We're salaried employees, so we don't have an hourly rate. Or even if you are hourly, even with a salary, you're still hourly because you have certain hours that you work. And so you want to maintain those hours by identifying those boundaries. You don't have to have the employee, you don't have to get employee of the month every month. You don't have to get employee of the year every year. You're given rest days, vacation days, sick days to use, not to let collect because you want to be this impeccable employee. All of us want to do that, and we want to sign our jobs with excellence. But we have to have balance to do so, because here again we will find ourselves being snappy, jumpy, um, not as effective as workers or employees as we could be if we had a healthy balance. So, not having that email on your phone where it's instant gratification, oh, I gotta check that email, or oh, I have to respond right now. No, it can wait. Take the opportunity to breathe. Schedule in your schedule, even at work, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour for a lunch or a break or a breather, or just to go walk outside to get some fresh air and some sun or something, so that you can come back in and be productive and be able to do what you're wanting to do. Another great way is doing something that you actually love. I can say, as a therapist as well as a school social worker, I love what I do. So my work life balance is pretty balanced, if I must say so, because I actually love what I do. So I never feel like I'm working. I feel like I'm just living my purpose and doing what suits me. And so, not saying that I have a perfect day every day, not at all. When I don't have a perfect day, I go into self care. That's another way of work life balance. Finding a self care regimen that works for you, something that makes you smile from your soul. That's the thing. Not just smile on your face, but smile from your soul. It makes you excited, or it truly puts you at peace on the inside, where you can be your best self and show up for yourself and show up for others all at the same time. So finding that and identifying what works, finding and identifying when you're stressed, speaking that out loud, I am stressed. And it doesn't have to be to anyone in particular, it could just be to yourself. That acknowledgement alone tells yourself that you're checking in with self and you're able to say, hey, I need to take a moment, and making sure you take a moment. That's again that scheduling and planning on what that looks like. So a day in life for me is I'm a school social worker from 8 to 4:30. Then that's Monday through Friday. Then Monday through Thursday, I'm seeing clients from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. So my self-care day and my take a moment and my pause is on Fridays. I don't see clients on Fridays. But that allows me to be able to say, okay, I can step away from one thing that I love and focus on the next thing that I love. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not doing that daily because I am. I'm a mother, so I'm very invested in my son and all of his things that he has going on. So I plan his schedule into my plan or into my week. Um, I see clients on Saturdays, but here again, if I have something that comes with my first passion, which is my family, that takes precedence and I make sure that it does so that I can be present for them as they are present for me. And again, having that work life balance. The scheduling, you have to be intentional with scheduling.
Yeah.
You have to be intentional. You have to be consistent with your scheduling because things can't go awry. You know, there's the saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
And you have to put that, and that's part of being intentional with your scheduling and checking in. So, though my schedule may be set for the month, I'm still weekly every Sunday because that's my other day where I don't have typically don't have work or clients or anything like that going on. Sunday is my scheduling day, so I look at my schedule for the week. I look at my son's schedule for the week. I see how it's going together. If there's any planning or prepping that I need to prepare for that week, and that way I know what I'm doing and where I'm going, where I'm supposed to be, and I'm being intentional about how I'm spending my time. If I see laws in my schedule, then I plug in self care. I'm big on music, so music is my self care. So in the morning, as I'm driving into work, you better believe there's going to be some type of song on or some type of music that's making my soul smile. Um, in the afternoon, same thing. If a client cancels, I find that as a time for me to do some self care. That may be I'm reading a book, or that may even be me prepping for the next day or planning for the next thing that I have going on. We're all busy creatures, of course, and we're always looking for what's the next best thing to do and how to do it. If you don't know what your self care is, that's where you start as well. Create completing a self care assessment. There's many assessments out there. You can look it up, Google them, and find them, and you'll be able to identify what domains maybe you need to work on because there are 7 domains of self care, and so you may have to do that assessment to begin your plan. And then I always tell everyone when you find things that you're interested in or that you like or you haven't tried before, then put that in your self care plan to do for 15 minutes a day. Start there, see how it goes, see if it works, try it. And then if you like it and you're like, okay, you know what, this actually works for me, then bump it up to 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
But it's the intentionality and the building and the planning to do so. And start small. A lot of clients will say, well, I like to exercise, I want to run. Okay, that doesn't mean go out and do a 15K. That means take a 15-minute run around your community for a minute, or get on the treadmill for 15 minutes. Build up to that 15K if that's a goal for you.
Yeah.
But finding those things that truly makes your soul smile keeps you intentional. because then you see the benefit of it all and you see it working for you as opposed to just being willy nilly. Because if it's willy nilly, then more than likely you're going to stop. Understanding that you are your first priority and that's what comes first, and making sure that you're intentional with self. Um, and then you can be all the other roles, and that's including if you're a spouse and a wife and a mother and all that good stuff. And so you want to do that. Um, Another big thing is accepting that it's never going to be perfect. It's just never, it's never going to be perfect. It's going to you're going to have to make tweaks and changes and adjustments and figuring out all that stuff. So you want to make sure that you're not looking for the perfect plan, but the plan that works for today.
That's right.
Or the plan that works for the moment. Again, going back to if you find a job or a career that you enjoy and that you love, even more it feels like you're not working and you're able to really commit to having the balance because, hey, it's something that I enjoy. So it doesn't make me overwhelmed. It doesn't make me anxious. It doesn't depress me. It actually brings me joy. It makes my soul smile. Prioritizing your health. So when you recognize that you're not feeling well, recognize it, acknowledge it, accept it, and then plan how to balance that out. So making a plan for your health, making sure that you're following doctor's orders, you're going to the doctor, or you're following mental health orders, and you're seeing your therapist. Those sorts of things are all priorities. So you want to prioritize your health, your well-being, and that comes first. Biggest thing in this day and age of media and accessibility is it's okay to unplug.
Yeah.
It's totally okay to unplug. It's okay to turn off all of the social medias for a minute or turn off the notifications. It's okay to turn off the emails and things of that nature. Setting that time, setting that boundary to say, I don't have to be in the know of everything at all times. It's okay. I remember, and if anybody else out there remembers, there was a time before we had internet that existed. It truly did, and we were able to survive. We're not going back to the cave ages. It's nothing like that. But it's okay to say, hey, I don't need to know what so and so is thinking on Twitter and it's the 140 words. That's okay. Unplug. Be present with self so that you can be present with everyone else. That's important. Take a vacation. Again, I don't know how many times I've heard, oh, I have 300 and something vacation days, or oh, I have so much vacation. If I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. Then that means use it. Because the job would not put it in there that you'll lose it if you don't use it. Use your vacation. Even if it's a staycation, even if it's just a mental health day to unplug, unwind, and be present. Use it. It is by law that they have to give it to us. So by law, make it your law to use it. It's okay. So take those vacations, go places if you can or if you desire to experience and be present in those atmospheres and those environments as well. Again, making time for yourself and for your loved ones because that's your first job. Remembering that that's your first job. Yourself and your loved ones is your first job. Your career, your job, your employer, all that is secondary. And so making time for those things is important. And being able to be present is important. And it doesn't mean, oh, I'm here with you. Oh, but I got to check my email. Or, oh, I have to send this quick text message to my boss. Or, oh, my boss is calling. No, that means being present means, hey, I am off the clock. I am not accessible. to this part of my life at this moment, I'm truly only accessible to myself and to my family. And guess what? You can also take non accessibility to the family if you need to, because that's a part of being balanced. You have to have time for self. Setting boundaries is important. So those boundaries are more than just, um, you know, I'm only going to do this during this time. Boundaries is my work schedule is 8 to 4:30. I'm accessible from 8 to 4:30. I'm not accessible after 4:30. Whatever it is that comes after my time schedule will have to wait till the next day, and that's okay. Nothing's gonna fall apart if you're not accessible after hours. They'll wait till the next day. And if they can't, that means they didn't plan.
Yeah.
And their failure to plan is not your failure.
That's true.
It's not. Set goals and priorities. Again, making that plan and setting priorities in how you're going to make everything work is important. But also remember, if you make that to-do list and you don't get down to everything on the to-do list, that's okay. Let it ride to the next day. Let it go into the next day. And then put those things maybe at the top. Or when you're setting your goals and your priorities, looking at which is truly priority number one, which is truly priority number two, and so forth. Because sometimes we make a to do list and it's 10 things, and only four of those things are truly important, but we didn't prioritize them properly. So the four things that's important has been brought to the bottom, and we get our day is done, and we haven't gotten to those four things. And now we're anxious about it, and we're stressed, and we're like, oh my gosh, I had to get this done. And we wind up putting in more hours because we didn't truly prioritize what made sense, what needed to go to the top of the list, and what could wait, or what have you. So making sure that you set those goals and those priorities properly so that you can get it all done in a timely fashion so that it doesn't carry over into your personal time and into your home time. Um, so that's pretty much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That's excellent. That's good. Now I have a few, things to point out. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. Now, a lot of people have realized or discovered that so many people struggle with setting boundaries.
Mhm.
What word have you got for anyone that falls into that?
So my favorite statement to setting boundaries, or those that struggle with setting boundaries, is, what about you? What about you? The boundary is being set, it has to be set to protect you. If it brings you harm, hindrance, or discomfort, set a boundary. And that's okay. A boundary is not a punishment, it's not a consequence, it's a protection for the person that is setting it. And that's all it is. And when it becomes difficult for others to respect that boundary, that in turn means that they're not comfortable with setting their own. But you have to set it, and you have to be consistent, and you have to follow through with it. But remember that it's for your protection, not for anybody else's.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something along the line of structuring one's day and a list of things to do. Say 1 to 10 things on the list, and a person gets to number six and number four, 7 to 10 weren't done. And that person, I've come across many people who beat themselves up for not finishing the task, and therefore, they've done it several times. They gave up. They
Mm-hmm.
said, "No, I'm not setting, uh, having a list of things to do. I just take the day as it comes,"
Right.
and that leads to either having backlog or at work, and if they are studying, setbacks and all that. So they run into anxiety, beating deadlines. So I've always said to them, if you can't carry over. So I would like you to talk a little bit more on, have some word of advice for people who find themselves not being able to, achieve all they have on the list, you know.
So again, you want to, when you're setting your list, you want to make it smart. So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So when you're looking at your to-dos and your priorities, again, that's why you have to identify what's top priority. What if you know, for instance, if you're at work and you know you have a deadline, and your deadline is just throw out because that's the Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
You know your deadline is Valentine's Day, and you have this project, then you want to make sure that as the closer you get, you don't want to set your deadline for Valentine's Day. You want to set your deadline for, say, today, for the 10th. So it gives you 4 days to go back through whatever it is you were working on to ensure that it's totally prepared for the 14th, that you're not still in the preparation phase. So it's prioritizing what things need to be done in order to make it happen. And so when you're setting your task list up, here again is what do I have control over? That's the first thing, because sometimes we take on tasks that we don't have control over. No matter how much we do towards it, it may not be our final say or it may not be our final project. So we can only control the things that we can control.
Yeah.
And so that's how you set your priority list. What are the things that I can control? And what are the things that I have the bandwidth of completing at this time? So if you know that and once you find it out, then you start to say, okay, this is going to be task number 1, task number 2. Also, sometimes we jump ahead. We know what we have to do and we work backwards. It's like, no, you had to do this before you did that. And so now we're working harder than we need to. No, we start from scratch, start from the basics. I usually will use before you learned how to run, you had to learn how to walk.
Yeah.
Before you learned how to walk, you had to learn how to crawl. So here we go. We go back to the basics, baby steps.
Yeah,
crawl, walk, run.
Yeah.
And take your time and ensure that in doing so, you're taking your time in an effort to make it make sense for you. Again, at the basis of all of it, it's you.
Someone would say to themselves, I'm a man pleaser, I've heard this several times from clients. When I ask for their weakness, someone will say, oh, my weakness is that I'm, a man pleaser. So such a person will find, because from what you said, you are your priority.
Right.
Okay. So if that is the case, and which is true, you are your priority. And this other person is saying, my weakness is because I'm a man pleaser. So that person will find it difficult to, accommodate the fact that he or she should be his priority.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you say to such a person?
So when you're a people pleaser, again, it goes back to self. Does this situation benefit me in a way? And I'm not saying, we sometimes will say that that's selfish. But selfishness is where you don't care about the other person. It's all about you. You care about the other person, but you also have to care about self.
Yes.
And so first it's, how does this benefit me? What good does this bring for me so that I can please this other person? Not how can I please this other person, but yet I'm being the doormat or disrespected or whatever other word. We don't want to put others above us just for the sake of them being happy, because then we're depleted. And no one's going to pour into us the way we can pour into ourselves. I don't care what the relationship is. And then you can't be everything to everybody if you're nothing to yourself. So we go back to, how does this benefit me? What will come of this for me in order for me to best support this person? And that's the other thing, changing the verbiage from pleasing this person to supporting this person. Because there's been times where we will say, "Oh, I'm pleasing them, I'm pleasing them, I'm pleasing them," and they're still not pleased. Mm-hmm. That there's the saying of, ask a person, finding out who's there for you is based on them asking you for something and you telling them no in their response. Mm-hmm. With all the yeses, with the millions of yeses, the one no, if that one no sets them off, there was nothing you could do to please them anyway. But a person that's truly there for you and understands that you're just there for support, they will understand, okay, this is a no this time. But again, I had all these other yeses. So maybe it's just a no this time. Yeah. That may be even something that will urge them to check in on you and say, hey, are you okay?
That's true, yeah.
How are you doing? But if we constantly say yes, and then what are we left with? Mm-hmm. So now we've poured out our glass and our glass is empty. Then what? Yeah. So I always go with what's benefiting me. How can I support this person? Not how can I please this person?
And if we are not taking care of ourselves, it leads to other things, right. Being depressed and you can't function. No. But you need to be stable to,
right.
Help somebody. So the first person is you.
Right.
So that's good. Now, there are people who their problem is striving towards perfection. Mm-hmm. And I've always said to my clients, no one ever attains perfection.
No.
The good news is that we are always striving towards perfection. And when you are striving towards perfection, it keeps you focused. It keeps you on the track, so you are heading somewhere. It's just like some teachers who don't believe in giving 100% to with all some, so that child, that student will always want to get something, always learning, always right. wanting to perfect themselves, but not actually hitting perfection. So those who struggle with being perfect in anything, oftentimes that leads to anxiety and depression.
Definitely.
Because they are never there, and they think they must get right. to perfection. And when they start being anxious and depressed, they're off the track.
Right.
So that's a health issue. So what can you say to anybody who is always, I want to be perfect in this, I'm striving, I want perfection,
So the first thing I say is define perfection. Define perfect. We know what the Merriam Dictionary states what perfection and perfect is, but then we may have to adjust and see what is perfection for you. So I tell my clients, define for me, what would that look like for you? And then usually when they break it down in that manner, where they say, okay, this is what perfection looks like to me, then I go in and say, okay, so if that's what perfection looks like to you, where do you find yourself on that definition, on that continuum? Because there's no such thing. None of us are ever going to be perfect.
No.
It just doesn't exist.
No.
But, I also understand that for so long, people hear that word and they feel like, oh, this is what I'm striving for. So then we have to define it for ourselves. So then it becomes, okay, well, this is what perfection is for me. And then it's like, okay, well, if that's what perfection is for you, where do you find yourself falling on that continuum? And then it becomes that aha moment of, oh, okay, well, I am there, or I'm almost there. So then if I get the response, well, I'm almost there. Okay, so let's talk about what do you need to do in order to get there, and break it down into those chunks of pieces and those concepts, and it makes it more palatable and it makes it seem more achievable than if we're just going for the dictionary's
Yeah.
description of what perfection is. Because then I also challenge the word in itself, like, but who came up with these words?
Yeah.
We don't know who came up with these words. They were just words.
Yeah.
And people put a definition to it. So why not put your
Yeah,
own definition to it and make it make sense for you? That's the key. Defining it for yourself.
Yeah, for yourself, yeah. I always say that to the patients I work with. What does anger mean to you? I do not mean the dictionary meaning, but what does it mean to you personally?
Right.
How do you see it?
Right.
Yeah, that's good. So one last thing for you. You mentioned 7 domains of self-care, which is interesting for me too, and I'm sure our listeners would like you to, just briefly say what it is.
So seven domains of self-care is the domains of life.
Yes.
So you have your spiritual domain, your mental health, your mental domain, your physical domain, environmental, financial, of course, professional, and your emotional. So that's your seven. Your 7 domains of self-care is where do I fit in all of these things? Where am I in all of these things? So, for instance, I journaled. I have a journal that is called The Purposeful Life. It's a passion-driven guided journal, and at the front of it, the first things you run into is defining what self-care is, defining what those domains are, and identifying doing self-assessment to identify how well you're doing in those different domains. So again, that goes back to checking on yourself on how's your heart, how are you emotionally, where are you mentally, how are you mentally stimulated, or where are you mentally at peace at. Spiritual, if it's in religion, or if it's just in being one of the world, or if it's in being one of the many different spiritual aspects that there are. Financial, does my finances look the way I want them to look? Which in this economy it's a little shaky. So it's figuring out exactly where you are in each concept of life and of self. And so those are the 7, and that's how you kind of break through those.
And these are, essential.
Yes, it's very essential to know.
Yeah.
And strive for. That's definitely something you want to strive for. You may find yourself doing not so great in one domain. That doesn't mean you can't do great in it. It just means, okay, I may have to put some more effort in this area or in this domain than I do in this one.
And with the frequency and consistency.
Right. Consistency, frequency is important.
Yeah. Then that person can. Yeah. It's a lifestyle of self-care which everyone should, aim to get and to apply, all the time. Even I've always said to my people, even if your medication for that medication to be very effective, you have to live a lifestyle, taking care of yourself, taking care of things, making sure you're not isolated, making sure you're out there socially, as reaching out to people, all these things put together, a healthy lifestyle can even enhance the effectiveness of the medication one is taking. So, these are nuggets of life. So thank you so much. I appreciate your presence here. And moving forward, we'll be having more, things to talk about because you can see, anxiety and depression is really eating deep into one's life. A lot of people are, going through hard times, and we need sound, should I say sound doctrine,
Right.
sound ways of doing things.
Yeah, and there's supports out there.
Yeah.
It's definitely some things that can be done, and it's again going to professionals and making sure that if you do have a question, and remember that therapy isn't just for when you're having a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Therapy can be in the interim.
That's right.
It could be in the beginning. It could be when you don't even understand yourself. That's a good time to go to therapy.
That's right.
Whenever you're feeling a little confused on what's going on with me, how do I figure this out? Definitely find a professional and seek that assistance.
Yeah. That's what therapy is.
Yep.
Yes. Not just mental breakdown now.
Right.
No. It's a lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
so that the mind, soul, spirit is in harmony.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, and thank you to all our listeners. And we've almost come to the end of this episode. If you are happy with what you've heard, please subscribe to this. Links below to gain more of further information. And Miss Carter is a therapist and a social worker, so she can help you if you need any help with anything. So you can easily reach out to her. Yeah. And you operate in Louisiana as well, virtually, is that correct?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I have my practice is housed here in Texas. So I do virtual and in person here in Texas, but I do virtual for Louisiana.
Okay.
I also have a show that streams on Roku, Amazon, and Fire TV, which is on the Black House Media Network, and it is a part of the Mind Matters channel. And so you can check out great information there. It streams all day, so you can check us out there. And as I stated there, I do have a journal currently out. It is available on Amazon, so that's a good help as well. And more stuff is yet to come. So Passion and Purpose Fulfilled, and I can be located on any social media platform.
Yeah, journaling is very good.
Yes.
Yeah, it is good. I love what you do. Journaling is good. It's a good tool, that helps to, you unpack whatever is here and put it there.
That's right.
It gives you clarity. You may come on and talk about journaling, as a coping tool.
Okay.
We'll organize you come and talk to us about journaling, which is very good. I find it very useful.
Yes.
Yeah. It helps with anxiety, dealing with anxiety, depression, and all that.
Definitely.
There is beauty in journaling.
There is.
Yeah,
and that's why it was created. Purposeful Life was created from my own personal journals that I was keeping. And as I reflected and as I grew in my own journaling, I went back and said, you know what? There were a lot of questions I was asking myself through this process that most people probably don't ask themselves. And so I created Purposeful Life and made it a journal.
Journaling is a powerful tool. If I link it to scripturally, God says, write down the vision and run with it.
That's right.
So you've got to, think it, the ideas, put them down and run with it. And if you're not there, somebody else can continue running with it. But if it's all here, that can even bring emotional breakdown, and it loses its value.
That's right.
Right. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you.